Hello everyone, we have done with GS3 paper. In this session, we will discuss about our take on the paper, and how the distribution of the question were and what kind of question were has been asked. Right. Along with that, we will also discuss what could have been the probable model answers or the general guidelines how you could have been attended. Right. There can be n number of ways how you can do it. However, this is a broader general guidelines. Okay. So to discuss this in detail with me, I have Ashish sir. Welcome to the session, sir.
Thank you, Aditya Sir.
Ashish sir, what is your primary take on the paper?
Yes, sir. So, if you look towards this today's paper on GS paper 3, this paper more or less was on the expected line, and the paper was more traditional type only. Where if you just see all the 6 sections, sir, that is economy, agri, science, and tech, the division are also more or less like what has been in the past. For example, economy had the weightage of 4 questions, that is 50 marks. Agriculture had 4 questions, weightage of 50 marks. Internal security, 4 questions of 50 marks. Yes, this time there were 4 questions on science and tech, 3 questions on environment ecology, right? This time they did not ask a question on disaster and disaster management. So in general, whatever is the traditional line of the UPSC for GS paper 3, where the questions were straightforward more or less, a generic type of questions where meaning, scope, significances, challenges, such type of questions were asked. But yes, definitely writing these questions in the examination halls in the limited time period can be tough for many of the people, right? But in general, paper was, yes, moderate towards more easier part, right? GS paper 3. Only challenge could have been to completion of the paper.
Yes, but there are certain questions, let's say 3 to 4 questions, which are very specific. For example, the contribution of India towards ITR project.
Correct, sir.
What has been achieved by India with respect to implementing NDC.
Correct.
These were a little tricky. And it is 1 or 0 binary kind of question where you cannot
Correct.
generate the point without having the broader idea.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So apart from that, yes, as you have said, they are more on the lines of easier side.
Correct.
But these could have been the tricky thing. But only few people would have been in that position to attend it. So somebody who have missed this part need not to worry, because they are very specific. And if you have not done very well, as long as you have maintained your better answers in the other question, it should be fine.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So now in this session, let's start discussing with question by question.
Yes.
Right. First, we'll finish 10 markers and we'll understand what should have been the introduction, or what could have been the introduction rather. Right. And then what would have been the different dimension you could have brought. Right. Then we will move to 15 marks question.
Yes,
right.
definitely.
Yes. So let me start with the first question.
Yes, sir.
Distinguish between Human Development Index HDI and Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index with a special reference to India. Why is IHDI considered a better indicator of inclusive growth?
Yes, sir. So if you look into this question, the question is direct, where they are asking you the meaning of Human Development Index, inequality based Human Development Index, especially in the context of the India they are asking, and why is it important, right? So this question has been derived from the syllabus topic called as inclusive growth. In inclusive growth, we need to understand about the inequalities, right? So here in this question, you could have written the answer in the following way. First, basically, sir, if you just speak about this question, then the introduction could have been much more better like this, where in intro you could have written what is the meaning of the HDI, right? So HDI is nothing but a composite index, which calculates the value of education, health, and standard of living. Correct. This report, which is published by UNDP, in the recent edition, India has ranked 130th. Recently, India has ranked 130th. But if you consider the same report and inequality-based HDI index, the score has been very, very less, which is about 0.475, right? While the score, especially of the HDI, is something called as 0.685, right? So there is a difference, there is a disparity between HDI and inequality-based HDI, correct? So HDI is giving us the idea, in a general idea about education, health, and the standard of living of the people, but it is not understanding the disparity within the men and women, rural or urban, especially men and women disparities, we are not able to understand. So that is why inequality based HDI provides us a clear picture. So this could have been a great introduction here in this context, HDI and the meaning, the UNDP report, India's ranking and the India score, and then we could have moved towards something called as inequality based HDI. Now coming to the second part of the question, that why it is considered as inequality based HDI. Inequality based HDI is a better indicator because of the following reasons. The reasons could have been multiple. The first major important reason is targeted for the better targeting of the policies, right? Policies, right? Second, for ensuring the inclusive growth, right? Understanding the disparities between disparity with respect to education, health, life of standard of living, sir, right? So in this context, we could have been better writing this answer. Plus, we could have given one or two substantiation point. For example, sir, this disparity between HDI and inequality based HDI have led to 30% of the losses, sir. 30% of the losses, correct? So if you really want to have inclusive growth, sabka saath sabka vikas, then definitely we have to consider inequality based HDI, which is much more better than HDI. So this could have been the way in which you could have written the answer for getting the better marks, sir. If you have anything to add, sir, you can add it.
Yeah. So one, as you have said, you could have started with the introduction with what is HDI and so, that the definition, and there are two parts of the question. One is the distinction between HDI and IHDI, that will be your first part, and why IHDI is better is your second part, where when you are explaining, these kind of, we can have a targeted schemes, then you can bring the scheme like Janani Suraksha Yojana, Janani Shishu Suraksha Yojana, where basically kind of examples that you can bring, so make it more authentic. Similarly, enrollment with respect to girl education itself, how that can be. So schemes names can be added to further.
So that means when we are writing about education, we can add about Samagrak Shiksha, about health, we can write about Ayushman Bharat, etc. Those things could have been added.
Could have been added, so that include, and the second thing, the recent observation, if you look at it also, though the things are improving with respect to indexes, but the gap is also increasing post-COVID. So that is why it has become more concern, because of the education has improved due to intrusion of digital technologies. However, as there is a urban and rural gap, this gap is actually happening between the rural-urban gap is also increasing. Correct. So one way it is improving, other way it is actually increasing the gap also. So in that sense, basically,
we can write it in the form of the challenge.
Right. Challenges, you can add it, because it is a 10 marks question. Content will be very less to add as such, so you can add few challenges why it is happening also, so that to fill in that gap and make it look more comprehensive. Exactly. Right? Yes. Next, we'll go to the second question.
Yes, sir, second question.
What are the challenges before Indian economy when the world is moving away from free trade and multilateralism to protectionism and bilateralism?
Correct, sir.
How can this challenge be met?
In this question, the question says that Indian economy, what are the challenges before Indian economy when the world is moving away from the free trade towards something called as protectionism policy? So the great introduction for this question could have been out of the context of the question could have been this, that the recent tariff war ongoing between US, China, then imposition of the higher tariffs, for example, imposition of the higher tariffs on the Indian context, right? So in Indian context, the USA has imposed almost about 30% of the tariffs, and where it shall affect about 131 billion trade between India and USA, right? So similarly, because of the Brexit issue, we're also having recently the issue with respect to Russia-Ukraine crisis, because of that, the imposition of the tariffs. So because of this, we can see that the world especially is moving from something called as the free trade multilateralism towards a protectionism. So this is a basic context in which question is asked. So brief about it, you can write that the ongoing tariff war and the trade wars, higher tariffs have led to something called as more protectionism based policy, which have affected something called as basically आपका export led growth. This has affected something called as export led growth, correct, of the different countries. In this context, India is facing the following challenges. The challenges are as follows, right? So challenges are as follows when India is facing this particular challenge, because Indian economy, which we are moving towards a $5 trillion economy, yes, definitely, India ka growth have been propelled by something called as export-led growth, correct? In this context, if there are more protectionism based measure, higher tariffs, etc., then challenges are as follows. So first challenge could have been, sir, reduced market access to the Indian exports, right? Reduced market access. So here we can give the example of something called as European Union, correct? Because of the carbon based adjustment taxation, CBAM, where the higher tariffs has been imposed upon the higher carbon goods like steel, etc., because of which uh, the prices of the steel will increase and it will affect the exports. So that is why market access can be a great challenge because of this, something called as protectionism based policies. Similarly, sir, there can be supply chain vulnerability because input, output, and all the supply, global supply chains are interlinked to each other. Similarly, the third most important is unfair trade practices. Unfair trade practices. As we know that WTO is known for something called as a rule-based trade and the free trade. However, the considerations of the WTO is not being taken into consideration by the big players like US, etc. So basically, because of which unfair trade practices are seen, and that is a great challenge for India, yet another. Similarly, there can be the vulnerability for, especially in the Indian context, for service-led exports. Service-led exports can be affected by this, right? And because of this protectionism, India now have to diversify and depend upon only few countries. So that can be yet another fifth point, that is dependence upon the few countries. So these are the basic challenges that India is going to face, mainly because of the ongoing protectionism based policies, right? So in this context, sir, we have to find certain solutions and the way ahead. So in the present context, Indian economy have to diversify its market. That is the first most important solution. Second, sir, we can consider that India can do something called as free trade agreements with the strategic partners, which can further propel its something called as the exports. Similarly, we have to champion for the India is a global player, where it takes the consideration of the South, global South countries into it is leader of the global South countries, where it has to champion for the multilateralism at the WTO, at the WTO based reforms. So that part can be added as a way forward and the solution for the better implementation of the policies and to save the Indian economy from the ongoing crisis with respect to the high tariffs or the tariff or the trade wars, ongoing trade wars at the global level. Sir, if you want to add anything, you can add it.
Yeah, yes, there are two parts of the question. One are challenges and how these challenges are met. So, you can have 4 to 5 points on the challenges.
Correct.
And, and a few challenges you can add, in the bilateral trades. Usually what will happen is you will not be in a position to, argue or, safeguard your national interest many a time. The critical industries like agriculture, those has to be given up sometimes when you are having a bilateral trade up. But when it is a more of a multilateralism, then it will be a, you can, the south-south kind of cooperation can help us to protect these sensitive areas.
Yes, textile, pharmaceutical industries,
Yes,
well,
right. Agriculture kind of thing. So what we are going to, protect ourselves in the WTO.
Correct.
Along with that, another area that could be, when you are giving the example how India is already, reforming itself by Make in India or, the production linked incentives, that is PLI schemes. So in this way, how India is actually protecting its domestic industry from the critical areas, right? So that also can be added. As such, India is in the same path. When we are actually giving our, conclusion, we can talk about to become Viksit Bharat by 2047, how that import substitution and, domestic independence that can be achieved by, this can be done as well. So that, in that way you can add the things, right?
Yes.
Okay, now let's go to the third
So
question.
that means, both the 10 marker, both the questions of economy were straightforward and direct, asked from the basic topics like first, inclusive growth, and second is about the LPG reforms, multilateralism, etc. So these 2 points of the syllabus in the recent times were focused by the UPSC in this first 2 questions.
So now let's go to the third question. Explain the factors influencing the decisions of the farmers on the selection of high value crops in India.
Yes, sir. So if you see this question says that which are the factors influencing the basically selection of the crops, correct? And especially that also high value crops. So this question is from the agriculture part. Syllabus topic is major crops and cropping pattern. The question says that whatever the crops that we are taking in India, which are the types of crops are there, that is cereals, pulses, then we are having horticulture, etc. All these are the types of the crops. Question says that which are the factors responsible for the selection of the crops. This is the first major thing. Now question says that which are the factors responsible for the selection of high value crops. So here first part of the question you can write Indian cropping system. You can write about Indian cropping system, right? Indian cropping system. You can write about that Indian cropping system is dominated by the cereal crops. However, this cereal cropping pattern now is diversifying towards something called as high value crops. High value crops, mainly for major things like for better market access, for better, I would say, better returns and climate change resilience. These are the major three reasons that why we are moving towards something called as high value crops. Now here you write the major factors influencing the selection of the high value crops, especially like horticultures. Then you are having something called as horticulture, then medicinal plants, etc. are as follows. The most three major important reasons for the factors affecting this are as follows, sir. First is आपका climatic factors, second is my infrastructural factors, and third is my institutional factors. Correct? These are the major three parts which are affecting the crops selection. Which crop selection? I am speaking about nowadays horticulture. Second is my medicinal plants. Third is my something called as, I can say, basically spices, etc. So now here the most important factor responsible for selection of these high value crops are institutional, that is policy support in the form of the MSP. Second is the technological factors, correct? Technological factors. Then we also need something called as infrastructure factors like irrigation, water availability, etc. Climatic factors, especially the climate, is a major determinant for the determination of the crops. Now this is a general idea, sir. Here along with this you can add that is economic factors like market access. Second is export, for better exports, right? Then we can have basically the different policy incentives at this part. So these are the basic points which you can add for basically the selection of the crops, of the high value crops. So here the data we need to put it also along with this. The data says that in the recent times, if you consider high value crops, especially like horticulture crop growth, we are able to see 52% growth of the horticulture crops in 2023 and 2024 as per economic survey. However, if you consider cereal crops have grown merely by 27%. So this shows basically there is shift in the cropping pattern from cereals towards high value crops. Similarly, in the states like Punjab, especially Punjab, people are moving from the cereal based crops, that is wheat, towards something called as quinoa, correct? Similarly, the people from Maharashtra, especially in the Nasik region, are moving towards the cultivation of the grapes, right? So people, especially from the Western Ghat states, are moving towards cultivation of the more spices. So all these things will help for basically, I can say, for better remuneration, better returns, better market access. All these things will be much more effective if you are moving towards high yielding crops. If you have anything to add, sir, you can please.
Yeah, it's good enough basically, but you can just add, initially, to make sure that you are very clear about the concept, you can just explain what is high value crop in the first step. That it is the crop which can give you higher return on the same piece of land, that is, so in that way it is higher productivity that way, so that you can introduce what it is, and then you can give the example in your introduction also, like floriculture, horticulture and spices, etc. So that will give a context of what we are doing about it. And then we can talk about the same issues with respect to different factors.
Correct,
right?
Correct. So I think this can be sufficient. So you can divide that economic factors, institutional, infrastructural, and basically climatic factors. So these factors are influencing that would be sufficient, because question is of 10 markers.
Yeah, that's 7 to 8 points. If you can cover that, would be sufficient. Okay. Now let's go to the fourth question. Elaborate the scope and significance of supply chain management of agricultural commodities in India.
Yes, sir. So question is a bit direct. Question is about something called as supply chain management, sir. If you just see, question is about supply chain management. You write in general about something called as supply chain management, what it is, what is the, so first part, what is supply chain management? Second, this question is asked about scope, and third is the significance, right? especially with respect to what is called as agriculture commodity in India. So there is question is very, very straightforward. So you can start the answer by writing something called as what is supply chain management, right? What is the meaning of the supply chain management? Supply chain management is nothing but basically a phenomena which connects especially farmer to something called as basically आपका consumer. Farmer to consumer connect, especially through multiple processes and multiple forward and backward linkages, represents supply chain management. Now, so speaking about the Indian context, in Indian context, what has happened is the following thing. First thing, sir, basically in Indian context, the post-harvest losses are almost about 33% as per the economic survey report. And India faces losses of almost about 90,000 crores. 90,000 crores. Because of this post-harvest losses, the farmers are facing this much loss. So basically, if you want to double the farmer's income, it is supply chain management, which is basically the pivotal importance. In this context, the scope, the student can write the answer in the following way. The scope can be written in the different way. One is pre-harvest phase, during, year, and post. So, but if you want to write more precise answer, sir, the better way of writing this answer could have been the following. But the best way, so here, who could have been the what is the scope of the supply chain management in something called as procurement, transportation, then something called as storage, then something called as basically processing, and something called as marketing and distribution, something called as distribution. So in this way, you can take each one stage in this particular forward or backward linkage, and taking that, you can explain what is the role of this. While explaining these points, you can provide one or other example and basically data. That's it. Now, if you want to increase the farmer's income, then yes, definitely supply chain management is important. That is this part, that is significance. So in this significance, you can say that it can reduce something called as post-harvest losses. It can increase farmers' income also. Secondly, it can help for achieve food security also. It can boost the exports also, sir. So all these points you can write. So in this context, you can write one or two other example like PM Gati Shakti, then supply chain, cold storages, etc. So this way you can address this question, which was very simple and very straightforward based question, sir. If you have anything to add, please.
Yeah, the same thing. The cold chain storages that has to be improved.
Correct.
And when you are talking about the significance, you can again divide it into how it will help the farmers,
Right.
how it will help the consumers, at the same time how it will help for the overall economy. There we can talk about export and those things, and when with respect to farmer, how it will know the price discovery and those things.
Right.
Here, whatever that I am seeing here is the kind of the keywords that you bring in, that will make your more authentic. The word kind of the price discovery,
Right.
and the import substitution, that kind of technical word, or the economical word that you bring into the answer, make it more authentic. Other than that, it is very simple. But always when you are having this kind of significance and scope, you cannot write much. But with respect to significance, you can divide further into 2-3 from the consumer point, and from the farmer point, as well from the economy point, as well as from the overall the society point. In that way, you can overall sum it up. So in that way, you can generate the points easily.
Correct. So that means aspirants, again, agriculture 10 markers, 2 questions. Correct. We are having agriculture total 4 questions. Out of that first 2 questions, 10 markers were again easy, directly from the syllabus points. So if you have thoroughly read each and every point of the syllabus, and if you have done the PYQs, then it would have been very easy for you to address these questions, right? So this is about economy and agriculture 10 marker question. Now we will move on to the question number 5, which speaks something about science and tech. Yes, sir.
The fusion energy program in India has steadily evolved over the past few decades. Mentions India's contribution to International Fusion Energy Project, that is the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor ITER. What will be the implication of the success of this project for the future global energy?
Correct, sir. So now speaking about this question, the question speaks about International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, that is something called as ITER. Question is about ITER. So you have to explain in general what is this ITER and what is this fusion energy project in introduction. So you can write fusion energy project. So this is the first part. In this fusion energy project, we are going to basically imitate or replicate the sun's methodology of generating the energy through fusion of the 2 lighter nuclei, right? So in this context, India is a pivotal for development of this particular reactor. In this context, what is the question says that what is the India's contribution? So this is a bit technical part, sir. India's contribution with respect to ITER. So India have been immensely contributing to this project in the following ways. First, so most important is that India have helped in something called as manufacturing of the cryosat, correct? Cryosat, especially cryosat chamber, it has been manufactured in Gujarat, which has been used for this particular project. Similarly, it is nothing but cooling and the heating system development. It is nothing but what? Cooling and heating system development. So, sir, similarly, India has also developed something called as heating and cooling system, sir. Heating and cooling system, which is going to be essential in this particular reactor. In this context, similarly, India have contributed for the various, I would say, precision components. And the most important component, sir, which was recently been in news, is something called as central solenoid, I would say magnet system, central solenoid magnet system, right? So, along with this, India is also helping with respect to the development of the plasma research and the institute which is present in the Gandhi Nagar, right? So, in this context, these are the India's contribution which can be important for something called as basically international, a particular thermonuclear experimental reactor. Now, the question says that if this is done, question says that what is the implication of its success? Implication of its success, correct? What can be the implication of the success? So, it's very, very simple, sir. If this has been done, then we can develop something called as clean energy. We can get something called as limitless energy, sir. Matlab abundant energy. Third, most important, sir, it will help us to achieve the energy security. It shall help in basically decarbonization of the multiple sectors and basically mitigation of the climate change. Mitigation of climate change. Along with this, the most important, so one of the major thing is that basically there will be very, very less, I would say, nuclear waste generated in the long term because of this particular thing. So these are the basic implications that we can add it in the answer part of this particular question. If you have to add anything, sir?
There are two parts. One is basically what is the India's contribution.
Correct, sir. Correct.
Second is about what will be the implication. So if I can divide it into
Correct.
5 marks each, then you have to write 4-5 points, and you can add human resources extra along with the industrial expertise what India is adding. How through its human resources also it is adding, you can talk about it. And you can give the recent example of Bar a small nuclear product. So those things basically reactors that also can be added to further your.
Yes, sir. Bharat nuclear reactor added. Yes.
Be added. Small nuclear reactor, right? So that will be added. So in that way, it is broader way. If you can cover 4 to 5 points here and 5 to 6 points here, that is it what you can, practically achievable in the examination hall as well. If you do that much, that would be more than sufficient in that way. So let's go to the question number 6.
Yes.
How can India achieve energy independence through clean technology by 2047? How can biotechnology can play a crucial role in this endeavor?
Yes, sir. So this question, sir, is very, very interesting. This question is about energy security, but question is asking energy security especially through the biotechnology means, right? So the question says that first we have to explain something called as about energy security and energy independence.
Yeah, there are two parts again.
Energy security and energy independence, right? So as per the recent document, it says that recent government document says that India may achieve energy independence because of the clean technologies by 2047. This is what the document says that. And to achieve this energy independence and energy security, it is none other than so-called as our biotechnology, which is going to play a pivotal role. Now, question says that how is this biotechnology important to achieve this energy independence? That means question is asking something about waste to energy. Question is asking something about the biofuels, sir, in this context. So here, the best way to write the answer is something called as introduction could have been the following way. You can write about India's energy mix presently has been skewed towards something called as the traditional conventional sources, especially coal. So, which is basically something called as polluting, full stop. Hence, to achieve the NDC and the net zero target, it is the clean technologies which can help to achieve the energy independence. Second part, coming to the second part, sir, that speaks about something called as how is this biotechnology important. Questions about biotechnology and its role and the importance in achieving energy security. Because if you want to know the data, etc., especially in the introduction, in the first 2 lines, you can say that yes, definitely the solar energy capacity have been increased by almost 4,000%, sir, right? And similarly, we can say that the renewable energy capacity has presently now 220 gigawatts, right, which we have achieved before the deadline. So this shows definitely that India's progress towards the clean energy and the renewable energy is right on the track. Now, coming to the second part, sir, this biotechnology ka part. Question says that how is this biotechnology important? Correct? So, see, how can the biotechnology play a crucial role? Or the first part, let me again re-emphasize, how can India achieve energy independence? India can achieve the energy independence through something called as basically आपका clean technologies, especially you can write about solar, you can write about tidal, you can write about, I would say, offshore energy, right? You can write about the offshore energy and the policies related to it. For example, National Solar Mission, PM Kusum Yojana, Tidal National Offshore Wind Energy Policy, etc. Through this, we can achieve energy independence, that is for sure, right? And you can give this particular data. Now, coming to this part, that is so called as the second part, that is how can biotechnology play a crucial role in this endeavor. Here you can speak about advanced biofuels, sir. Advanced biofuels. Second, we can speak something about basically algal biofuels. Algal biofuels. Third, that is genetically engineered biofuels also you can speak about. Third, we can speak something about basically compressed biogas, sir. Compressed biogas. That is something, I'm here writing nothing but in short waste to energy, and I'm writing something about biofuels, sir. So through the research, especially in these fields, can help is to develop something called as clean energy. You can also write about agricultural biotechnology, that is waste to energy feedstock also. We can write about how is this biotechnology can be helpful in carbon sequestration also. So these points, if you write, then definitely you can write a good answer for this particular question. If correct. So the question was very easy. This is a repetitive theme, that is energy security and climate change. And how is the application? How can the technology help in achieving energy security at the same time mitigate climate change? So the question was a bit traditional, sir.
There are only two parts, right? One is basically how clean energy technology India can achieve its independence through clean technology by 2047. That will be our first part. Second will be with respect to biotechnology. That will be our second part. So in the first part, since it is more of a broader clean technology, you can bring all the different types of clean technology like solar, nuclear, whatever that you are having, right? Wind energy as well as bioenergy, everything that you can bring about. However, in the second part, when you are having particular to the biotechnology, you can divide how biotechnology can be used in the industrial process also, like methanol, green hydrogen, that also can be bring upon from the biotechnology. And along with that, you can also talk about the biofuels and those things. Yes. So in that way, if you can have 5 to 6 points here, 5 to 6 points here, your job will be done. So that is pretty good enough to attend the question. Right. Okay. Now let's go to the seventh question.
Yes, sir.
Which is again on the environment. What is carbon capture, utilization and storage? What is the potential role of CCUS in tackling climate change?
So in my class, sir, I repeatedly tell that climate change is a important theme. And second most important thing which I tell is that climate change mitigation is important and how the technology can help. So in this question, the context, the question is very simple. What is CCUS? You have to write the simple definition. CCUS is nothing, carbon capture, utilization, storage is nothing, but it is a transformative technology, sir. It is a transformative technology or use of the transformative technologies where you are going to capture something called as atmospheric carbon dioxide and permanently store it underground or make utilization of it. Why is it done? It is mainly to reduce something called as CO2 and something called as climate change. So in this context, sir, these technologies will help to capture the CO2 not only merely from atmosphere, rather from the industrial emissions, etc., and can be stored, which will help us to mitigate the climate change, right? So this is a brief introduction and a general part about it. Now we have to write about this. What is this carbon capture? So what I tell students is that first you write carbon capture, how it can be captured, how it can be utilized, where it can be utilized, and how it can be stored, correct? So capture can be done in 3 stages, that is pre-combustion stage, post-combustion, especially in the industries, and pre-combustion, post की जगह पे you can write during combustion and post-combustion, sir. So the other three part. So here this can be done using different technology, direct carbon capture, or direct I can say direct air capture, pre-combustion, use of the oxy-fuel combustion chambers, right? Use of the different technologies, especially here, that can be helpful for the capturing of the CO2. Utilization is a crucial part, because if you capture just CO2 from industries or from atmosphere, wherever it is, what are you going to do? We need it for something called as basically for pharmaceutical products. Secondly, for basically something called as, I can say, along with this pharmaceutical, I can say it can be used in food and drink and beverages industry. It can be used in something called as chemical products, building materials, etc. Now, question is where it can be stored. It can be stored, especially we have to focus something upon the geological sequestration, sir. In this geological sequestration, especially the saline aquifers, then so-called as depleted oil and natural gas reservoirs. So these things will help you to store. So this is a basic part, or the first part of the question, sir, CCUS. Now the second part, along with this, here only I have dealt the second part, how it is, what is its potential role in CCUS in tackling climate change. So in this potential role, you can tell that how it shall help in the mitigating the CO2 emissions from the certain industries. Similarly, how the policy actions can be taken, etc. This part you can write as a second part, that is for the emission reduction. You can also focus something about climate policy integration, economic and the industrial benefits. If you add these points, then definitely this answer could have been much more easy. And this question is very direct, especially from our class notes itself.
So there are only 2 parts again, as you can see. The 5, you can divide them, and you can give here a little more important for the second part with respect to potential role, compared to what is the definition of it. Where in the definition also you can cover about 3 terminologies have been given. What is the meaning of capture, what is the meaning of utilization, and how it is storage. Even if you can decode that each word, and if you can bring few points there, and then add more point with respect to its role in tackling the climate change especially, will be more helpful. Correct. Right? In that way it would be easy question to attend in that way. And yes, you can go to the next question. Seawater intrusion in the coastal aquifers is a major concern in India.
Correct.
What are the causes of seawater intrusion and the remedial measures to combat this hazard?
So the question is very straightforward, sir. Question speaks about seawater intrusion, basically because of the climate change and the ongoing natural hazards and these disasters around the coastal ecology. This question is from the, I would say, from environmental degradation and the ecological issues. So you can write very simple. This question number 8 is basically, you can start that something called as seawater intrusions. Seawater intrusions. So sir, here you can, if any student is writing this, means he could have started directly. Seawater intrusions, especially in the coastal aquifers, have been penetrating into the groundwater aquifers as per the Central Groundwater Authority and the report. That means 70% of the coastal areas have been now more under the seawater influence. This is what Central Groundwater Authority says. You can also quote that example, the Chennai, in the context of the Chennai, almost about the 2 kilometer Chennai ka stretch have been affected by seawater stretch. Similarly, in Maharashtra, that is in something called as Vasai Virar in Mumbai, also it is affected by seawater intrusion. Now coming to the second most important point here is the major concern. So this concern, especially this concern, it will affect something called as freshwater resources. It will affect something called as drinking water. It will affect something called as a livelihood. It will affect something called as agriculture. Correct? All these things will get impacted because of the seawater intrusion, especially along the coastal area. The next part of the question says that what are the causes? So here I can say that the causes are as follows. You can divide the causes, sir, as the natural causes. What are the natural causes for seawater intrusion? And something called as anthropogenic causes for the seawater intrusion. So the natural causes can be basically because of the tidal inflow, because of the climate change, and all these reasons, especially the sea level rise, etc., will help so-called as for geological conditions, etc., will lead to the seawater intrusion. Anthropogenic causes, in the recent times, it is the man-made causes which are more important and to be noticed here for seawater intrusion. That is over exploitation, industrial activities, etc., will lead to something called as seawater intrusion. And then we can move on to something called as remedial measures. So these are the basically the 4 parts. In this remedial measures, you have to write the solution, that is technological measures, what are the legal interventions done by the government, etc., for and how you can control the seawater intrusion, which will help me to protect the freshwater resource, that is coastal aquifers. This is how the structuring of the question can be done, sir.
Yeah, and also if you want to add how the recent initiative, the regional variation with respect to Maharashtra, how it is happening, and you can bring about that, and the recently the declaration of Gujarat as a dark zone regulation that they have done, where the extraction of groundwater has been banned, where there is a intrusion of this kind of the water is there, or in the Karnataka Carland regulation that they have developed to develop this kind of artificial recharge of those things. Those can also be bring as a case studies to enrich your answer, 1 or 2 case studies. And since the question is actually again 2 equal question, 5 marks, it is easy to divide and just have to 5 to 6 points for each part. That itself will be more than sufficient to write a very good answer in such a way.
Correct. So that means in remedial measures also you can add those groundwater management, aquifer recharge,
Desalinization,
Yes,
those things you can bring up upon, right? Okay, so now let's go to the 9th question.
Yes, sir.
Now this is on
Internal security, sir. Yeah. So if you just see, sir, sorry to interrupt. So if you just see out till 8th question number 8 up to 8 first 2 questions are on economic students. Second to the question number 1 and 2 are on economy. Question number 3 and 4 is on agriculture. Question number 5, 6 is especially on something called as your science and technology. Question number 7 and 8, we are going to classify it under the environment and ecology part. And question number 9 and 10, we are going to classify it on internal security. So let us deal with question number 9. Yes, sir.
terrorism is a global scourge. How has it manifested in India? Elaborate with contemporary examples.
Correct.
What are the countermeasures adopted by the state?
So, yes, sir. So this is a very, very repetitive theme. I would say rather a repetitive question, right? So question is very straightforward. Terrorism is a global scourge, correct? So you can write what is the meaning of the terrorism, right? Terrorism is the use of the planned, systematic use of the violence against the people, the nations, everything, correct? For what? For the different objectives, socio-economic and political objective. In this context, you can write, yes, terrorism is a global challenge, right? And to prove this global challenge, you have to write Global Terrorism Index or any United Nations report to show that, yes, terrorism is a great global challenge. The second part of the question says that how it has manifested in India. Now, coming to the second part, manifestation of the terrorism in India. In this context, you can write the terrorism in India in 2 ways, sir. Here you can write it in the form of the spatial approach, or second is the temporal approach, correct? Temporal approach and the spatial approach. That means you can say from 1947 till something called as 2023, how the changes has been region wise. For example, first we can say that first challenge India terrorism in India is manifesting in the form of the left-wing extremism in the center India, Northeast India insurgency, militancy in the Jammu Kashmir, with the timeline. So 1960s May, it is none other than so-called as left-wing extremism. 1950s May, it is none other than left-wing extremism. 1980s May, it is Punjab militancy, right? Then 1990s May, Jammu Kashmir, you can write, right? In general, the points are general. Similarly, later in the terrorism in the form of the bomb blast, the riots, right? These things you can write. In the post 2000, the terrorism-based challenges are changing, right? Especially the linkages you are able to find it with the cross-border, one. Second, it is nothing but the technology which have helped in penetrating the terrorism. For what? Recruitment, for secondly for operational tactics, etc. For fund mobilization, etc. So this is how the India is also affected by the following challenges. We can write it. The next part of the question says that elaborate with the contemporary examples. You can give there are multiple examples. You can write any few examples. You can write about Operation Sindoor also, right? That is a terrorism because of the non-state actors. Rather than saying non-state actors, we can say state actors, because Pakistan has been a part of it, which we are trying to tell it to the global forum, right? Then what are the countermeasures? So very interestingly, you can write what are the measures undertaken to counter the terrorism adopted by the state. So India has a policy for the strict policy to deal with the violence. In this context, the major takens are legal framework, sir, legal, institutional framework, right? And security related measures. So in legal framework, sir, you can add about something called as NIA Act 2008, National Investigation Act 2008. We can write about Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, the amendments done to it, right? Then Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, the clear definition of something called as the terrorism, that can be the part of the legal measures. In institutional, you can write about how the various ministry and basically technologies like, for example, multi-agency coordination center, NatGrid, etc., which can help us to counter the terrorism through combating something called as upcut terror financing, right? And security measures, that is strengthening our forces, border related forces, use of the technologies, etc., can help for something called as tackling the terrorism. And at the global level, the most important measure you have to write is finance, terror finance, combating the terror, because finance is a lifeline for the terrorism. If you write in this way, then I personally feel that 10 markers ka question 150 words can be written in very well manner.
You can also add basically, with respect to how basically the infrastructure development, in those areas which has been affected by lack of development, that can be, or, the de-radicalization of the youth through the, education and awareness, or through the school programs. So that also can be added to, in the first place, how it can be avoided becoming a victim of a terrorism influence in the first place. So in that way, you can add it in that way also. Yes, in your remedial measure, along with your security measure, you can add the social and economical or educational aspect. Correct. So that to make it a broader aspect as such, right? Correct. And surrender and rehabilitation, those kind of, which we do it for left-wing extremism, those kind of, reformist measure also can bring to show India's, other way of handling the things. Correct. As well. So in that way you can, but the question was very simple, since it is manifestation, and elaborate with contemporary example. Here the contemporary example becomes a little, where you have to bring and make, first part of your answer and the remedial part in the second part of the answer. But Pahalgam and those things, Pathankot, the recent example that has been happened, correct, has to be mentioned to make it more contemporary. So that we have to keep in the mind while writing the answer. Otherwise, it is a pretty straightforward question. Yes. Now let's go to the 10th question. The government of India recently stated that left-wing extremism will be eliminated by 2026. Correct. What do you understand by left-wing extremism, and how are the people affected by it? What measures have been taken by the government to eliminate left-wing?
Correct, sir. So this part is from the syllabus ka first one, linkage between development and spread of extremism. In this context, extremism, one of the form is Naxalism. So this is a repetitive alternate year theme, that is Naxalism. So here the first part says that basically left-wing extremism will be eliminated by 2026. This is what the Union Home Minister spoke about. So here question is, what do you understand by LWE? So that means you have to write the meaning of LWE. What is LWE? LWE, which is popularly called as Naxalism in India, because it originated in so-called as Naxalbari village. You can write it is nothing but use of the organized systematic use of the violence by the communist guerrilla warfare groups to destabilize the state and capture the political power. So this is what is something about the meaning of LWE. So this is what you can write as first part of the answer. The second is that how are the people? So in general, you can write one or two causes. The causes are in just one or two lines, brief. The causes are basically discrimination, exploitation, and the lack of the development and lack of the inclusive growth that have led to the sense of alienation of the people, which have led to join them into the ranks of the Naxalites. This is the causes in general, the two lines. Next point is, how are the people affected by it? So how the people are affected by it, here you can write especially about the recent MHA report. Ministry of Home Affairs speaks about the n number of the cases of the violence. Then second is about the destabilization of the civil infrastructure. Then something about the disruption of the civic amenities, correct? Loss of the lives. Those things you can write as per the report, how the people are affected by the left-wing extremism, especially in the red corridor region, right? Draw a map also here. The next part of the question is, what are the measures taken by the government, right? The second is very, very simple. The measures taken by the government, you can write infrastructure measures, same, developmental measures, infrastructure measures, institutional measures, and something called as basically APCA, institutional and security related measures. In this context, developmental measures with respect to schools, hospitals, connectivity, infrastructure matlab about, yeah, you can write both together. Infrastructure matlab schools, hospital, connectivity, special expenditure scheme, road connectivity projects. So in institution, you can write about the division which is specifically in a MHA focuses upon the Naxalism. Then speaking about the security related measures, you can write about the operations which have been undertaken, Green Hunt, vagara, from where Operation Greyhounds, from where the expertise were been taken by the security forces, especially the paramilitary forces like so-called as CRPF, development of the Cobra Battalion, etc., Bastaria Battalion, etc. And finally, you can end your answer with the recent Samadhan doctrine. This is the most important. Either you can write in the measures at the start or the conclusion, that is Samadhan, that is smart leadership, aggressive intelligence, better policing, etc. This could write. This answer is much more effective. This was the most easiest question of all the 10 questions asked in the GS paper 3.
So along with that, one point that I can add is basically when the left-wing extremism, it is there in the syllabus, it is the linkage of left-wing extremism and the development.
Correct.
So that means that, the development part also has to be given in a certain weightage, where we are talking about, we are working towards the education of the tribal people through Ekalavya model residential schools.
Correct.
Or you can also talk about, the PESA, right? Or
Yeah, legal measures.
Also,
Yeah,
schedule 5 areas, right? So where you can, legal me, you can make it a mode of governance, so that, the participatory democracy can be more brought in real terms, so that, rather than, again, the same thing as we have talked about terrorism also, that is basically election properly, or, de-radicalization of the youth. And these things basically, and and they are, your own people thinking in the other way, so you can have that, surrender come rehabilitation kind of scheme to bring back them to the mainstream again. So in that way, again, it is one about how you can eliminate this way, and another is the ideology itself has to be taken out by giving them the hope. So that development part, it is there in the syllabus, that also has to be brought, so that, it can be made more comprehensive in that sense. Correct. Right? As you have told, you have to put the red corridor and other things, and if you can bring the state-wise challenges also, whatever that is remaining, that would be well enough to go. And, mining and other activity that is being affected, they make them part of the benefit, that they, whatever their resources are being utilized, how you can make them as a part of it through employment creation, those things and other things. So in that way, basically, in the broader perspective, you have to cover in both remedial. Yes, right. So now that's about 10 marks questions. Correct. All are pretty simple, apart from one which is very particular, as I told you, about India's contribution to ITR, which was very particular. If people would not have, gone through it, that might. But however, ITR is an important theme in SNT. Right. But however, if somebody have missed it, you don't need to worry. That is just a part of question. The second part within that is how it can overall impact the energy security. That can be addressed here. You can balance it. So other than that, the most of the questions are pretty straightforward. Even if you can divide all the questions, and now here only that you will have more number of points, only have to make sure that every part of the question is addressed very well. Once you can do that, give the justice to every part of the question, paper could have been managed better, right? Now let's move to 15 marks questions. The 11th question, that is from the economy. Explain how the fiscal health index can be used as a tool for assessing the fiscal performance of states in India. Second, in what way it could encourage states to adopt prudent and sustainable fiscal policy.
Correct, sir. So question is straightforward. So this question is asking directly about what is the fiscal health and how it can be used for assessing the state. So actually, sir, if you try to understand the introduction of this question, you can directly write what is fiscal health index. So it is a particular index. What it does, it was started basically by the Niti Aayog, which ranks the states, and it improves the competitive federalism with respect to the fiscal policies, etc. So that can be a great introduction initially to tell about FHI. Now, this fiscal health index is prepared on the basis of the 5 indicators, which are the most important. The question will be revolving around these 5 things. The first major thing is basically quality of the expenditure, how the states are spending the amount, that is revenue expenditure, capital expenditure, how they are spending. Second is how they are mobilizing the resources, fiscal prudence, depth, and debt sustainability. So they are the 5 major things on the basis of which ranking of the states is done in the fiscal health index by Niti Aayog. Now, the data for these 5 things is used by this particular Niti Aayog from the CAG. So, whatever the CAG provides the data to bring that authenticity and basically true picture, the CAG data is used by the Niti Aayog for bringing up FHI. So, depending upon this FHI, the states, all the states, that is presently it is ranking about, if I'm not wrong, 18 states it is ranking. So, these states are categorized majorly into the categories like basically achiever states, front-runner states, performer states, and aspirational states. So this is what is FHI, which depend upon which we are going to rank the states. Now, in this context, sir, this FHI is very important for prudent and sustainable fiscal policies. How? Because Depending upon this FRBMA Act, which was brought, and the NK Singh Committee report, which speaks about debt to GDP ratio, etc., to achieve that and to adhere to the FRBMA, the most important can be FHI. Secondly, it will help the states for the effective resource mobilization. Thirdly, it can help the other states to know the best practices from the top states, what they are doing, how they are doing, so that that can be replicated by the other states. Similarly, it can be helpful for the resource mobilization and the quality of the expenditure, sir. Mainly, the states can focus more upon the capital expenditure, so they can more focus upon the asset creation, right? And over the period of time, we can bring long-term rationalization in the taxation, which can be more beneficial to the people and to the states. So in this way, this FHI is extremely important for fiscal prudent management, sir. So this is what you can write in this question. So introduction, the 5 parameters, categorization, and its importance in this, where you can tell the states also, sir.
Again, if you look at the question, since it has been introduced for the first time or launched for the first time in 2025, it is an expected question from that perspective when we are talking about the competitive federalism aspect of competitive federalism, right? However, this question is also very specific. If you don't know what is health, fiscal health index, then this would have been a tricky part as well, right? So, but however, it was an expected line, so I cannot say that it is completely, out of the kind of question that has been asked. It has been launched in 2025 for the first time, so anyways, it will be very important from that perspective, right? And you can add a few examples also, because the Odisha, right, Chhattisgarh, Goa, they are in the more of a achieved state with more than 50% of the score. So and as for this kind of question, it is always better to look what is the component of this index. Each component will give you what is that advantage of this. For example, if there is a quality of expenditure, you can talk how it will help to improve the quality of expenditure. If there is a revenue mobilization, then you can talk about how you can diversify your taxes, how you can have the non-tax revenue can be further increased. So that means that it will also give you a broader picture, right? So in that way, every point, or the debt sustainability, right? So where the quality of expenditure also matters here, where you are taking, or that kind of capital expenditure to revenue expenditure. So those things basically, because in the recent report also they have told that Punjab and West Bengal, there is a concerning trend that their sustainability of the debt itself is questionable at this point of time. So in that perspective, you can bring those example also and make it more broader.
Right. To add upon this, basically, earlier the questions were about FRBMA Act, etc. So in the bridge course which I recently conducted, I do remember I spoke about the state's fiscal performance, correct? Where we have given the state-wise ranking, etc. So I do remember, if any student has studied that part also, state fiscal performances, then he also could have addressed this question very effectively. Coming to the next question, sir.
Discuss the rationale of the production-linked incentives schemes. What are its achievements? In what way can the functioning and outcome of the schemes be improved?
Correct. So there are basically, sir, 4 parts of the question. We have to explain PLI scheme. Second, its achievement. Third, its functioning and the outcome-based input. So 3 parts directly, 15 marks question, where you can add at least 6 points, right? So the introduction can be basically written as follows. So where you can write simple, what is this PLI? Production linked incentive scheme. Whichever is launched, what it is basically, since earlier point, it is nothing but a paradigm shift with respect to the subsidies, from the traditional input based subsidies to the performance based subsidies. So that means on the basis of the performance, the incentive will be provided to the manufacturing sector, right? In this context, it is a part of something called as Atmanirbhar Bharat, which will help India to boost its manufacturing capacity, sir, right? And reduce the import dependence. So this 2 to 3 points can be the introduction point about what is PLI, right? Coming to the most important second point, sir. The second part of the question is that rationality. So the rationality, most important rationality is, it will help in production generation plus import substitution. It will improve the exports. It will create the employment and the technological upgradation. Because if you just try to understand PLI, out of the total PLI, most of the PLI is given to the MSME sector, sir, right? And now question says that, the second part of the question, that what are its achievements? To tell the achievements, we have to tell something so-called as sector-wise. So India has done very well with respect to the electronic sector, automotive sector, pharma, drone sector, etc. So in these sectors, the PLI has performed exceptionally well. Now, coming to the last part of the question, sir, it says that how the functioning and the outcomes of the scheme can be improved. That means there are certain challenges the PLI is facing. So in this context, if PLI needs, in where the PLI needs the improvement, it needs to simplify the compliance process, then strengthening the technology transfer, sir, because technology is very important for the effective manufacturing, and so called as expanding the scope of this scheme for bringing up the upcoming future or the emerging technologies, right? And it can, we also need to much more strengthen the forward and the backward linkages which can help this PLI scheme and for the effective manufacturing, especially of the domestic sector, so that we can bring more resilience in the industrial sector. So this is how the 4 parts of the question can be addressed, and which was a straightforward question. So if you can add anything to this question.
See, one is basically the last year, that is 2020 for me. It was 10 years of Make in India program. Correct. Right? So it is a decade, and it has been well discussed even in, if you look at the PIB article, they have specifically talked about, and to have that goal of Make in India, one of the ways basically the incentive, and through which basically PLI has been brought to further boost this Make in India idea at the larger scale. Correct. Right? So in that context, it becomes important. Right? Then basically you can bring some, since it was very important from that perspective, you can also bring some data. For example, it can help to create around 10 lakh jobs, or how we have become 4th largest exporter in terms of smartphone after this PLI. Because here in the PLI, the focus more is on the critical areas like defense, like electronics, like automotive, within which basically even in pharmaceutical APIs. Right. So wherever India is having an advantage, where it can become a global player rather than that import substitution, because we are more dependent on China on this side, and the trade deficit is much larger. Here they have planned to make sure that it becomes truly Atmanirbhar. So in that way, basically it becomes important, and you can add those points also. And if you, with respect to its achievement, if you are not completely well known, then at least if you know what are the sectors covered under PLI, you can just say that the expansion of Apple has come here, right. The Apple production has become, those things you can bring up with the example how smartphone export has increased. Like that, you can just by sector wise you can give 3 achievements, right? How in that way you can cover the things, right? So otherwise it was good question.
So these are the 4 questions, sir. Question number 1, 2, question number 11, 12. So 4 questions have been asked from the economy part.
1, 2 and 11, 12. So 10 plus 10, 20 plus 30, 50 marks is from the same ratio has been maintained compared to the last previous years also. Good. Now let's move to the next question. Examine the factors responsible for depleting groundwater in India. Correct. What are the steps taken by the government to mitigate such depletion of groundwater?
Correct. So question is very straightforward. Again, a water-based theme, which I generally tell in the classes plus IBC classes also, that water-based theme will be frequently asked. So this question it has asked about depleting groundwater. What are the factors responsible and what are the measures? So what you have to do, introduction groundwater-based scenario. Second, the causes, that can be natural, anthropogenic, and the measures, that is policy-based measures. What you can do, first thing, groundwater. So in this context of groundwater, first the context you can tell that almost as per the Niti Aayog and the Central Groundwater Authority, that 59% of the groundwater have been extracted already. Plus the Niti Aayog says that it is going to, the groundwater level extraction is going to triple by 2080, where most of the Indians are going to face something called as water scarcity or water stress. Correct? Plus on the basis of the groundwater, almost about 62% of the irrigation is used basically for the agriculture sector. That also majorly for the 3 crops, that is rice, wheat and sugarcane. In this context, it shall also affect the rural water supply. So this, all the fact shows that definitely groundwater depletion is a ongoing crisis, correct? So which is very, very straightforward. Just to substantiate that part of the question, you can write any 1 or 2 facts from this particular content. Secondly, question is, how will it affect? The question says that basically what are the, how will it affect? It is going to affect the agriculture, industries, rural livelihood, drinking water resource. So those 4 points also you can mention. Next is basically reasons. Question says that examine the factors responsible. Now for reasons, that is nothing but factors responsible. These factors responsible can be clubbed as basically natural factor and something called as anthropogenic factors. Natural factors, you can consider it as geological structure, right? Then secondly, you can speak a lack of infiltration rate, etc. Anthropogenic may basically groundwater is basically over extraction, unsustainable use by the industries, by the domestic sector, concretization, climate change, lack of the vegetation and the forest cover. These are 4 to 5 points which you can add it for the depleting groundwater level. Now coming to the major part. Now in this context, we have to conserve the water. How? For in this context, we are having Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Atal Bhujal Yojana, initiatives by Central Groundwater Authority, then community participation, etc. will help for so-called as replenishing the groundwater aquifers, which will help us to mitigate the water stress. So that means the question is about water stress, especially in the context of the groundwater. This is what.
So that's it. So it is basically, you have in detail, you have covered everything there. With respect to that, you can also add, the project Nannir of Tamil Nadu, where they want to, improve the groundwater level, those kind of things. Or, Jan Bagirdari, where, community participation, those things that can be helped to, rejuvenate, artificial, water recharging, these things that you can bring. And also there is a positive trend with respect to rising the groundwater levels in Haryana and Rajasthan due to their, active measures taken by them as added to a positive impact of the government policies as well to, enrich your answer. Other than that, it is good, right? And also you have seen that even in the prelims, they had told that, one of the India uses the largest groundwater, resources for its this thing. Right. So you can talk about this, and also with respect to agriculture, irrigation, wherever it is being useful and how it has to be managed, and that has to be spoken more about. Yes, otherwise, yes, this is a question. Now, next, go to the 14th question. Examine the scope of the food processing industry in India, first part. Elaborate the measures taken by the government in the food processing industries for generating employment opportunities. Right. So one is scope, another is what are the measures taken.
Correct. So what, as you have said rightly, this question is from the agriculture part. Examine the scope of the food processing industries. The introduction can be what are food processing industries. Second part is the scope, and third part is basically the measures taken. Correct. So the first part, speaking about the first part, food processing industry, if I speak about, in food processing industry, India is the second largest producer of the fruits and the vegetables, which itself shows that India has a great potential. Secondly, when we speak about basically food processing, India has diverse agroclimatic regions, and that is why the availability of the raw material is diverse with respect to fruits, vegetable, meats, poultry, then marine products, etc. Because of which food processing can be done much more effectively. In this context, the major scope is as follows. It is nothing but employment generation. Second is gross value addition to the agriculture sector, which can be about 1.92 lakh crores. It can generate about 7 million jobs, right? Then the most important significant advantages and the potential is that it can help for doubling the farmer's income. Secondly, generate the employment opportunities, value addition, rural transformation. It can reduce the post-harvest process and basically generate the employment. This is what are the advantages, scope, and the potential of the food processing industries. In this context, government is mainly focusing upon it through various initiatives. That is PM Kisan Sampada Yojana, cold storage schemes, similarly mega food parks. Then we are having PLI based schemes, 100% FDI through automation routes. All these things will help for basically so-called as basically food processing units.
Again, the scope of food processing industry, when you can't get this kind of question, always understand that, you can divide that, in the stakeholder approach, right? Like whenever the food processing, what farmers will get, correct, what consumers will get, how it will overall help to the overall food security of a nation, correct, as well as, with respect to trade deficit and other things, how it can help the export and reduce the trade deficit, correct, at the overall economic level. So if you can divide them in from the perspective of in that way, then you can easily generate 2 points, and it become, because whenever it is 15 marks question, you have to generate, let's say 8 to 9 points, then, just by looking at the question, it becomes difficult. So try to think about, who are the stakeholders, and then that will help you to, get 2-3 points for each, and, it will be good enough that, you can bring your answers, right? So yes, and this is again directly from the syllabus, so it has been pretty much prepared by most of the students. So I don't think that should be a very difficult question as such, right? Now let's go to the 15th question.
15th question, science and technology.
How does nano, so that is 13th and 14th again are from agriculture, sir.
Correct. So we can club this 13th as a part of the environment or agri,
environmental.
agri, and 14th is agriculture.
Yeah, consider it 13 and more from
14.
the environment perspective. Okay. Now let's go to the 15th question. How does nanotechnology offer significant advancement in the field of agriculture?
Correct.
How can this technology be help? How this technology help to uplift socio-economic status of farmers?
So,
Again, two parts.
correct. So, speaking first, how does nanotechnology help in advancement of the field of agriculture? First, what the student needs to write is about agriculture. First, you can write about Indian agriculture is facing the critical challenge with respect to the soil health, where the nutritional use efficiency is very minimal. Full stop. In this context, nanotechnology is a solution. In this context, now we'll write the first part of the question. How does nanotechnology offer significant advantage? All right. Now, in this context, significant advantages of the nanotechnology can be in the context of nano fertilizers, nano pesticides as follows. So, this is how you can write, sir. So, agriculture sector mein nutrition use efficiency is very low. That is first challenge, and solution of it is nanotechnology. And this nanotechnology can help in increase in the yield of the crop yield. Then similarly for the environment sustainability, then it can help us to reduce the fertilizer use. In this context, nanotechnology in agriculture can be used for nano fertilizers like nano urea, use of basically micronutrients like zinc, copper, etc. Then nano pesticide, that is targeted delivery. Then something called as to reduce the toxicity. Then nano sensors, that is to understand the soil moisture level, precision farming, and for productivity enhancement. In this context, I can say that nanotechnology is very important in the context of the agriculture. This is the first part of the question, sir. This is the first part of the question. In this context, now the second part of the question says that how this technology can help to uplift the socio-economic status. So that means if you just try to understand importance of it in something called as socio-economic status. That means if you are using nanotechnology, by default, the production will improve so that earnings will also improve. Cost reduction will take place. At the same time, losses will be reduced. Then pricing, the premium pricing, the better pricing the farmers can get. And at the same time, health risk can be reduced. So this is how the farmers, the people will get benefited. At the same time, ecology will also get benefited, sir. Because of something called as soil health will get improved, carbon footprint will be reduced, biodiversity will consumed, and the most important is that excessive use of the chemical fertilizers in the agriculture field, which is leading to the algal bloom and reduction of the soil salination, all these things, over irrigation, etc. All these things will be further reduced, which will be benefiting the ecology and agriculture sector, both with the doubling the farmers' income.
So here again, if you look at the question, whenever this kind of, the agriculture kind of question that you comes, I always feel that it is a better way that, you can divide. So, because, whenever they are asking, so what are the advantages of it? So now when this kind of question comes, it is always important to understand a life cycle approach. For example, I start with how the agriculture starts. So that is, it starts with the input materials, right? Fertilizers. So during the fertilizer, what can be done? During the harvesting time, or during the growth of the plants, at that point of time you need pesticide, so you can bring the pesticide. After that, basically to monitor in the real estate, that is the real time health problems and all, though you can bring the nano sensors and all. So you can have in each step what can be done, so that you can divide the question into various parts, so that you can generate the point easily. Otherwise, randomly you are getting the point, it becomes very difficult to sometimes bring 7-8 points. So always, whenever you are having these kind of approaches like food processing, these kind of, or also with respect to agriculture, you can use the life cycle from starting to ending, and for each, if you can generate the points in between, that will add the values to your answer, right? Along with that, it is less toxic in nature, so women can be more participate in, so womanization of agriculture can be more strengthened. So in that way, basically in the socio-economic, you can bring those points also. So in that way, you can make it answer more comprehensive. But whenever this kind of life cycle approach, wherever it is possible, if you can bring, you can generate the points. Otherwise, yes, it is a easy question as such. And recent example of IFCO, and they got the clearance with respect to nano urea, and those things can be brought upon. Right, now let's move to the 16th question. Again, the question is on science and technology. India aims to become a semiconductor manufacturing hub. What are the challenges faced by semiconductor industry in India? Next, mention the salient features of the Indian semiconductor machine.
So the questions here of the science and technology is very straightforward. First, you tell India aims to become semiconductor manufacturing hub. So you can tell that why the semiconductor manufacturing hub is important, because as it acts as a backbone for electronic and the IT industry. At the same time, it is very important for the upcoming fields like AI, IoT, etc. For this, you will need semiconducting devices. And in this context, India is in the global race where it wants to become a global manufacturing hub. And in this context, as the question itself says that India does have India semiconductor mission. Full stop. Here you can write immediately second point, that is following challenges are there. So we just see the question. Here you can write the introduction as follows: semiconductor as a backbone of the digital and industrial thing, pivotal for the electronic and the defense sector. And secondly, rather than writing the challenges first, you can write the third part first, that is salient features of the Indian semiconductor mission, because that is the way forward. So in this India semiconductor mission, it is nothing but comprehensive policy support. It is going to for what? Something called as manufacturing of the semiconductors. Then it is going to provide the incentive to the manufacturers and the developers for research and tech development, at the same time for talent development, at the same time industry partnership, for strengthening the supply chain development. For all these things, this mission have been initiated by the government of India. But despite this, we are facing certain challenges with respect to semiconductor mission. These are as follows. First, the cost involved is extremely high. With respect to semiconductor manufacturing, the workforce that what we need is skilled. Then there is whatever the infrastructure is essential for development of this the units of the for the manufacturing of the semiconductor. We need a great amount of infra, but that is also lacking. At the same time, there are a lot of technological complexities involved in the manufacturing, and there is a rising global competition with respect to the semiconductor. Example, China is now again rising up as a basically semiconductor hub. It is competing with India. So yes, we have to compete with the neighboring countries also, and the global competitiveness is there with respect to this. So these are the certain challenges that India's semiconductor manufacturing hub is been facing right now. So these are the things that you can add into question number 16.
Again, if you look at in Gujarat, where there, the semiconductor fab facilities are coming, right? The fab is most important thing, where it is more, costly as well, basically. And the Micron technologies are, if you look at, the Dollara special investment region with respect to semiconductor, that has been even asked, right? So in those things, basically, again, it was in the news for a great extent. That is one thing. And second, whenever I see this kind of question, one basically, only there are two parts, and they have asked the challenges and features. Now, if you look at closely, salient features of the mission, you can write it in a more broader way only, because you won't be having exact word as it is, but it's a long-term vision, how the policy support will be given, incentive will be given, how during the process that those things can be brought upon, because that is a more of a very specific question, but you can make it generic and write from the overall understanding. However, when this kind of negatively connoted like challenges faced they are asking, it always becomes important to give some solution remedial measures also, so that you can make the answer comprehensive. Here you have to write for 15 marks. So just you can write 7 challenges, then directly features of semiconductor mission. You will not be in a position to do this. So it will be always better to bring some solution also, remedial also, along with the challenges. Need not be bring into way, but at least in a diagrammatic representation, flow chart, you can just say, so that you can make it more comprehensive. In that way, basically, you can add few things to make it more looking more comprehensive, right? So then now let's go to the 17th question. Mineral resources are fundamental to the country's economy, and these are exploited by mining.
Correct.
Why is mining considered an environmental hazard?
Correct.
Next part, explain the remedial measures required to reduce environmental hazard due to mining.
So, sir, this question is from the environment degradation. Question can be clubbed under environmental degradation and environment impact assessment, both the topics. So, question is traditional, repetitive theme is there. So, first part of the question says that mining is a fundamental to country's economy. Mining is fundamental to country's economy because it provides us metallic, non-metallic and energy-based resources. Example, coal, steel, etc. Correct? It is important because it is important in the context of GDP growth, manufacturing, employment generation. Similarly, for the export for developing the exports and the import substitution, it is very important for something called as industrial growth, energy security of the country. Correct? As I mentioned earlier, the example of the steels and the so-called as coal, etc. Now, the question further says that, sir, these are exploitative mining. But to get these minerals or the ores, I am saying, that is coal or anything, steel, etc., we need to do mining. Now, this mining is of open cast type or etc. Now, this mining is an environmental hazard because it leads to following problems. First, deforestation, biodiversity loss, displacement of the people, air pollution, groundwater contamination, right? All these are the major challenges which are being faced because of the mining, right? So it will lead to the issues like acid mine drainage, etc. So that is why mining is a great challenge. So that is why we need to this mining as a challenges will lead to the lot of ecological hazards with respect to all the biotic and the abiotic sectors of the ecology. In this context, we have to find the remedies, and the major solution with respect to this mining part, sir, is environment impact assessment at the early stage of the mining itself. Second most important is social impact assessment. Third, community participation. Fourthly, sir, what we need to do is that effective waste management, then wastewater treatment, all these things, then adoption of the much more cleaner energy technologies and land reclamation policies will help effectively. If you just see, all these measures will effectively help for so-called as reducing the adverse consequences because of the environmental, I would say, environmental hazards due to the mining. So that means we have to adopt towards a more sustainable mining type of measures.
Good enough. So we can also add about recent NGD's decision with respect to Sonabhadra finding it and all. We can also talk about Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand the flooding, which has been also has been told to for excessive sand mining and so and so. So those things also can be bring, and water contamination, toxicity in the water at the ground level also has happened. That can also be bring in the many cases. So that basically can add to a context as well why it is an environmental hazard.
Yes.
So in that perspective, we can have it in a broader.
Correct.
Right.
So we can also add a diagram also, sir.
Yes,
In this question.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
This is what is 17th.
Okay. Now let's go to the 18th question. Write a review on India's climate commitment under Paris Agreement and mention how these have been further strengthened in 2000 COP26 in 2021. In this direction, how has first nationally determined contribution intended by India have been updated in 2022?
Correct. So the question again is about environment ecology and climate change, especially about climate change negotiations. In this context, sir, the introduction part could have been like this, where we can say that the Paris Agreement initiated in 2015 moves away from something called as Kyoto mechanism, where there is something called as NDCs, nationally determined contribution, where each country will give its own self targets with respect to mitigating climate change, where the common objective is to limit the temperature rise to maximum 1.5 degree centigrade. So this can be the introduction part as a basically as an introduction part. Now coming the point, in this context, each country has given their NDCs. The question specifically speaks about COP15, especially in 2015, where majorly 3 to 4 things were focused by India, where India spoke that reducing carbon emission intensity by 33 to 35% with respect to 2005 by 2030. First. Second, it spoke about something achieving renewable energy capacity of total electricity capacity of 40%. Then third, it spoke about something called as making carbon sink of about 2.5 to 3 billion tons. These were the things which were spoken by India in 2015 in Paris Agreement. Right. However, these were updated. The second part of the question says that this has been strengthened in 26, COP26, in 20, where we say that definitely carbon emission intensity per unit of GDP should be reduced further by 45%. Then out of the total electricity capacity with respect to non-fuel capacity, we have to make it 50%. Then we have to make it, we have to install about 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity. And we are going to achieve carbon neutrality, that is net zero target by 2070. So these were the things which were given by India in COP26 in 2021, which we together call it as Panchamrit, sir. Correct. And in this context, question says that how the India has been progressing. Yes, India has been progressing very steadily, very good, where we are trying to achieve objects at the pre-level only with respect to the deadline. Yes, in this context, 50% of the total energy capacity is already done with respect to, is already achieved from the non-fossil fuel capacity. Similarly, our renewable energy growth has been great. Solar tariffs has been reduced. Wind energy production is there. Biofuel focus is there. And greener vehicles, green hydrogen emission, nuclear capacity is increasing. So emission intensity is also reducing. So these are the things which we can take away further to achieve the clean to achieve something called as climate change mitigation from the India's perspective. And yes, that is why India is a leader of the developing countries at the climate change negotiation level, sir.
For this kind of question, it is always, since it is more about the renewable energy and it is a repetitive theme, at least you should be having the data about what is the current production with respect to our capacity or the installed capacity with respect to solar energy. Let's say it has been around 100 plus gigawatts, and then you should have basically about the wind energy as well as the nuclear energy. If you have the data, that can be added in your achievement also, how we have been progressing. So in that way, and how we are ahead of our commitment 5 years back itself in achieving that 50% target. So that will add to your the more data that has to be brought here, and this has to be prepared data. It is not that you go and do there and that would be completely do the justice basically. Yes, right. Yes, but however, this is a little particularly asking with respect to the data. If you don't know the data, what is this commitment? If you are not prepared, this is a kind of question you can get stuck. But it is very important theme, so I don't think we can say that it is a tough question as such, though it is a data related. Yes. Now let's go to the 19th question again, which is on internal security. So what are major challenges to internal security and peace process in the northeastern states? Correct. Map the various peace accords and agreements initiated by government in past decade. So after Manipur, violence and so, so it becomes little important with respect to that. So overall, Northeast has been specifically asked, and peace accords as well as agreement initiated in the last decade. So that has been asked.
So if you just see this part of the question again, linkage between development and spread of extremism. Extremism, one of the form is insurgency in the Northeast, which is repetitive thing, so common. So major challenges in internal security and peace process. So major challenges in internal security and peace process in the Northeast are as follows. So introduction can be very important like this. Northeast India is having diverse socio-cultural dynamics, plus ancient rivalries and ethnic conflicts. So that is why to achieve the peace process is a difficult task at the first place. Secondly, the major challenges are, first, insurgency, infiltration. Thirdly, the most important is basically proximity to the golden triangle, narcotics, drugs infiltration, right? So this way you can draw the diagram also, sir. So this is what is the introduction part. So in this context, the challenges like insurgency, ethnic conflicts, border disputes, porous boundaries, and the presence of the safe havens, illegal migration, narcotics, connectivity, lack of development, lack of connectivity, safe havens, arms, presence of the arms, or presence of the linkages between organized criminal linkages and the terrorism, then proximity to the golden triangle. All these things are the ongoing challenges in the northeastern states. In this context, to deal with these challenges, government is having the strict policy of zero adherence to violence. Plus, at the same time, government says that within constitutional framework and legal framework, we are going to have a dialogues and the negotiations. In this context, Government of India in the past decade have signed the following agreements, the peace accords and the agreement. These are Naga Peace Accord, right? Second is Bodo Accord. Third is Bru-Riang Accord. Fourth most important is Kirby Anglong, and last is Tripura Peace Pact. So these are the ongoing peace process and the accords by Government of India. In this context, yes, whether there is success, answer is yes, definitely. As per the recent MHA report, the number of the violent incidents have been reduced. Definitely, I do know that Manipur violence is there, but number of the violent incidents have reduced. The casualty have been overall reduced, etc. So this thing you can write in the conclusion, showing that peace accord, negotiation, dialogues are the very important, and the long-term solution is to bring the development to the northeastern region. So these are the things that you can add it to the 19th question. So
the map also, value addition with
correct. Map is mandatory, correct, as rightly said, sir.
Now, right. Now the final question.
Yes, internal security, the final question.
Why is maritime security vital to protect India's sea trade? Correct. Next, discuss maritime and coastal security challenges and the way forward. So there are challenges, way forward, and why it is importance of it.
So a repetitive, very easy, direct question. What is maritime security? Maritime security refers to protection and safeguarding of the critical infrastructure, maintaining the sovereignty and integrity along the coastal areas. Correct? This can be the introduction, full stop. India's has a vast coastline of 7,516 kilometers, which is facing multiple challenges because of unfriendly neighbors in the Indian Ocean region because of the piracy, etc. That is why maintaining maritime security of pivotal importance. I hope you got the introduction part. Coming to the first part of the question, why it is important for the sea trade? The most important is, sir, the most important along with the diagram, what you write, the economic for economic purpose, because India's 90% of the trade by the volume is from the sea route, and 70% trade by the value comes from again from the water route. So that is for economic purpose. It is of great importance. Second most important is energy security, because there is something called as sea lines of communication. So for that sea line, for safeguarding sea line of communication, as most of the India's oil imports were dependent on the ports and the coastal areas only, correct? So that is another reason. Third is basically geopolitical significance. India is a major player in the Indian Ocean region, and for providing the security to the Indian Ocean region, again India plays a critical role. Then especially with respect to fisheries and blue economy, because the economic purpose and for fisheries, especially from the coastal community people, definitely maritime security is of pivotal importance. And the last and the foremost important reason is the presence of the critical infrastructure like ports, naval stations, etc. along the coastal areas. That is why safeguarding the maritime security is of pivotal importance. But despite this significance, there are present ongoing challenges which you can draw through the diagram, especially piracy, maritime terrorism, drugs, arms trafficking, correct? Then you are having illegal fishing, smuggling activities. All these are the ongoing present challenges along the maritime areas. In this context, the question says that key, what is the way forward? The way forward, you can write it as usual. That is, what is the legal framework? What is the institutional framework? What is security related measures? And how can technology can play a role? And depend upon that, 2 points on each point. If you write, then maritime security is a very easy question in this particular internal security part. So this is all about the 20 questions, sir.
Yeah, you can also add about the merchant shipping bill that has been recently passed and carriage of goods bill, right, by sea, that has been passed in last month. So that also becomes on that context, this is also another way to look into it. Now, if you look at the paper, right, so wherever the value addition were possible with respect to mapping and others, right, so that can add certain value with respect to I think the third question where we can talk about high value crops. You can show different crops in the different region, where Kerala are this thing known for the spices, those things, as rightly pointed out, that can be shown. And with respect to sea intrusion also, you can show the coastal areas and how it is been affected. And also left wing extremism, the red corridor that can be shown, and the showing problems can be talked about. Or I think the depleting groundwater, how basically in the region with respect to various region, due to the plateau region how it is depleting, in the Ghats region how it is depleting, and in the region coastal area how it is depleting, that can be brought upon. And I think that's it. So the major mineral resources also, you can show the various mineral resources part that way. And the northeastern map, as you have rightly said, that the question about 19th question which we are talking about, the northeastern region, the map is compulsory. That that way you can also in the maritime security also, you can show the Strait of Hormuz, or how it is as you said rightly, the sea lane of very communication, where you can show off these important oil areas or the oil routes, basically to have a smaller diagram, so make it more look like a better and value addition with respect to a 0.5 marks wherever it is possible. So in that way you can look into it. Correct. Apart from one 2 to 3 question, let's say, others are basically pretty simple. Only 2 to 3 question or pretty direct, or the direct information related, which you have to have a broader knowledge. Even if you are not having, you could have still managed with the other part of the question, right? So in that way, it's correct, manageable kind of paper.
So to sum up in 5 points, sir, the paper's aspirants was quite traditional and towards easier side. First thing. Second, except 2 or 3 questions which were more factual, rest of the things were directly coming from the repetitive themes and directly from the syllabus topic. That is the second part. Third part, if you are written it in point wise and written diagrams with the validation, then you have very good chances to score well. Fourth point, if you are taking syllabus ka each point and writing your pre notes plus all the PYQs brainstorming, then definitely this paper is very easy for those aspirants. Then coming up to this particular division, out of the total 6 subjects in GS paper 3, where we are having economy, agri, science and tech, disaster, environment ecology, and internal security. As traditionally, 50 marks weightage out of 250 marks, 4 questions were from economy, question number 1 to 11, 12. Secondly, agriculture, again 4 questions were there from agriculture. Science and technology, again 4 questions were there. Internal security, 4 questions were there, and rest of the questions were from आपका so called as environment ecology. It essentially means that disaster management का इस बार question directly पूछा नहीं है उन्होंने, right? So this is all about from our side with respect to the analysis of the GS paper 3. Hope that this helps to all of the aspirants and the students who have not written the mains examination in the real-time environment. We emphasize them to write this paper in real time within 3 hours in your own library or in your own study rooms, which will help you to assess your own level. Plus, at the same time, the students who are going to write next year mains, they should take learnings from this video, and also they should take the syllabus ka each point. And right now, they should prepare for the mains examination. Take syllabus point, guys. See the PYQs. Make learn and understand the topics, and make topic subtopic wise notes 10 points, which should be very handy for you to revise. That will help you to score very well in GS paper 3. So this is all from our side. We thank everyone for watching this video. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.